Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks very much for joining us at the first tinyML Auto Machine Learning Forum. I really appreciate you joining us, and I hope you're looking forward to this exciting couple of hours as much as I am. We're going to really try and do our best to show you a lot of what's going on in a really dynamic industry, a really dynamic field of auto machine learning for tinyML, and see what all we can do with it. Let me get started. First we have to thank our Tiny Machine Learning strategic partners. I'm not even going to attempt to read all of the companies that are sponsors of the tinyml.org, but you'll notice that quite a few of the names on this slide are participating in today's forum, are either showing demos or are amongst our panelists. And so, it's quite a big area in overall in the work that goes on in tinyML, or, teams and groups have some part of it that they work on that's in this auto machine learning space. So we want to also remind you to, if you haven't already, if you're on here, there's a good chance you have, but make sure you join one of the growing tiny machine learning communities on Meetup and in LinkedIn. There's links and QR codes on here. There are also, you'll want to subscribe to the Tiny Machine Learning YouTube channel. We are recording today's event. This whole recording will be posted on the tinyML channel, including this video pretty soon. So subscribe, see as the stuff comes up. And as I'll mention in a little bit, we're going to have some follow-up deep dive sessions on a number of the tools we talk about in today's sessions. They'll also be recorded, posted to YouTube. And so, check back there, come back there and take a look later on. The other big event coming up soon is the tinyML EMEA Innovation Forum in 2022 in October in Cyprus. The call for presentations is open. You can see the link there on the screen. Go sign up, look at going. I think it'll be another really good tinyML event. Always interesting and exciting kinds of stuff. So do please take a look at joining and try and present. So really want to take a minute and thank the technical program committee. I was lucky enough to be the chair, but none of this would have come together without a bunch of people. Sam, Martin, Kate, Tomas, Danilo, Evgeny, a few other people who dropped in from time to time, who really helped put this whole event together, came up with the idea and really put their energy and time into making it happen. And so as I heard both Evgeny and Ira say pretty recently, if there are other areas you're really interested in for tinyML, starting one of these technical program committees and volunteering is a good way to get them going. Before we get on to our keynote speaker, I did want to point you really quickly, just as a reminder. You probably saw this page maybe in an earlier version, but on tinyml.org, we have this tinyML Auto ML Forum where we talked about this event. You probably went to register, but there's a couple more things on it, even very recently. First is we have this document available, which is our kind of summary of the current state of this tiny Auto ML market. And all that really is a bunch of these 2-pagers or 1-pagers, summaries from each of the companies that are presenting today on what their tool can do. But we tried to do it in somewhat of a standardish way so that you could really take a look at the diversity of what's going on out there, what everyone could do, how it worked, things like that, in a pretty concise kind of way, and then have all the links to go learn more. And so that's available there. The other thing that's available, as I mentioned, is we're having follow-up sessions. So the first thing we're going to do after our keynote speaker is a series of 3-minute demos. So obviously 3-minute demos will give you a taste, but you'll not be able to really get in depth. So we have a set of 1-hour follow-up deep dive tutorials already scheduled. This isn't everyone. I think we'll probably be adding to this schedule over the next few weeks, but it's most of the companies that are presenting today. And the links are all live, so you can go and click on them and sign up for one of those deep dives right now, or as we're going through the demos or the Q&A, if you think I'd like to learn more about one or another of these tools, a great way to learn more is to go sign up for the deep dive tutorial. Do it right now before you forget, and get in there and kind of learn some more. So that's my first call to action for you, but we'll kind of remind you of that a little bit later. So without going too much further, and we'll get back to more of that, first up, we're going to have our keynote from Kjell Carlson, who's the head of data science strategy and evangelism at Domino Data Lab. Previously, he covered AI, machine learning, and data science as a principal analyst at Forrester Research, where he wrote reports on AI topics ranging from computer vision, ML ops, Auto ML, next generation AI technology, and data science best practices. And so please join me in welcoming and thanking Kjell for joining us for this exciting event. And Kjell, take it away.
Again, welcome everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me here. I would love to kick us off today by talking about the opportunities and challenges of tinyAutoML. I see tinyAutoML as really the culmination of two trends that have come together in the middle. One of them is the expansion of Auto ML, which was primarily originally focused on the part of the model lifecycle of developing the models, and it expanded into then deployment and now ultimately deployment on edge devices. It's also the culmination of a movement of tinyML in the opposite direction, where tinyML often started with solving that last mile problem, and has incorporated more and more of the life cycle, because the rest of the life cycle is so important in solving that last mile problem. So really, tinyAutoML is the apogee, the culmination of that merger from both sides of the life cycle. But before I really get talking about tinyAutoML, I wanted to talk about probably the single most impressive example of AI's potential to revolutionize the world that I've seen in a couple of years. And that is John Deere. And really, it's Blue River Technology subsidiary that does most of their computer vision work. And yes, I mean, the fully autonomous tractor that you might have seen over at CES, it's really impressive. It's really cool. It has sensors and cameras everywhere, and really we need solutions like tinyAutoML to make these viable, because we need to be embedding these kinds of machine learning models, that kind of intelligence, on the different cameras and sensors of this autonomous tractor, because you just don't have the bandwidth and you don't have the reliable connectivity to really be able to have solutions like this without it. And certainly the potential for feeding the world, increasing, reducing hunger, et cetera, is really boosted by this. And obviously, John Deere has done phenomenally well in the last year. I think its stock price has gone up like 6x, although that was before the events of the last few days. Arguably, I would say, though, that even more impressive than the autonomous tractor is their See and Spray offering, because the See and Spray offering, I mean, the autonomous tractor is great. Maybe it's scheduled to be for some of them to be to go live and be offered to the public, I think, at the fall of this year. But the See and Spray you can actually buy right now. And what it does is it sprays herbicides, maybe pesticides as well, but I think it's mostly herbicides, but only over the plants. So you save on herbicide, better for the environment, also more economical, and so on and so forth. But again, it relies on the ability to embed machine learning models on that edge device, working within the confines of the limited compute, storage, networking, etc., that you have access to on an attachment to a tractor. So in order for us to have more use cases like this, where we're embedding machine learning in the world around us, so think of visual inspection for automated defect detection in manufacturing, or predictive maintenance, or embedding computer vision models in everything from satellites and airplanes and drones, etc. All of that requires the ability to embed these optimized models on target hardware that is usually constrained in one way, shape, or form. I mean, obviously, this also then would enable all sorts of things from science fiction. You know, if you're into human-like robots, absolutely, we need these kind of technologies there. Arguably, I mean, really cool, but arguably not as necessary as all of these other very valuable immediate use cases. So, I mean, why do we need tinyAutoML for all of this? Well, first of all, it's because of the skills challenges. I mean, we all, how many organizations aren't struggling with being able to attract and retain data scientists? So really the number of folks that we have who can build a machine learning model of any kind is highly limited today. And if you need a deep learning model for, say, a computer vision use case or for an unstructured or semi-structured data use case, there are even fewer people who have those skills, let alone the folks who have the skills to deploy those. Hence the reason why machine learning engineers are probably the hottest, fastest growing occupation that's out there. But in order to achieve what we're looking to achieve here, it's not enough just to deploy those. You also need to be able to optimize those for the specific hardware that you're deploying on, which varies entirely by that type of hardware. So the very, very few people have that full range of skills. And even for that narrow set of folks who have those skills, they up until now haven't had the tools to do this in an effective fashion. This is all extremely manual, extremely time consuming just to be able to deploy that model once, let alone be able to do this on an ongoing basis across a wide range of different use cases, and to be doing this on an ongoing basis. And if there's one thing that always happens when you deploy machine learning models in the real world, it's that you very rapidly discover that your training data, the real world data, looks very dissimilar from your training data. So in the context of the autonomous tractor and See and Spray, do we think that these models will need retraining when they're suddenly on arid soil or in marshy soil, or in different environmental conditions? Yeah, you bet they're going to, and that's going to be the case for pretty much every real world use case that we're in. We're going to need to be constantly customizing and retraining these models. And if it's difficult, manually intensive, and there are too few individuals who can do it, and it takes too long to train one of these models once, to get through that life cycle once, you can only imagine the challenges of doing this on an ongoing basis, again, across hundreds, thousands of deployments, and potentially tens of thousands, maybe even millions of use cases that we could use something like this for. So that is the sort of the opportunity, or that's a need. But even just the challenge of getting across that life cycle for any use case is a challenge for pretty much every organization that I've spoken to. So this is data from a survey that I did with NVIDIA last year, illustrating what I found in pretty much every other survey that I've done, which has included questions on the machine learning lifecycle. It's that really organizations struggle with every part of the lifecycle. What was really exceptional for this one is that previously, most of the challenges were in the data preparation and data engineering and the feature engineering side of things. And it's a sign of the increasing maturity of organizations that we're now finally coming to all of the challenges of developing and deploying those models. In this particular instance, if you're wondering about the two bars, this was because we were particularly looking at folks who were trying to solve these challenges on the cloud versus in a hybrid cloud setting. And one of the key findings out of that was that it is particularly challenging to do this in a cloud setting. And actually, the folks who are going about and thinking about this from the point of view of on-prem and in the cloud are, at least for now, facing fewer challenges, but it probably also reflects that they are more mature. So what does tinyAutoML, Auto tinyML, choose your poison, how does it solve this? Well, it solves this by accelerating the life cycle. And that life cycle starts with the data annotation and labeling. And I would have to say I see fewer of the tinyAutoML solutions out there really focusing on this challenge. So for those of you who are tackling it, good on you. It's very, very important. A lot of folks have come to me struggling with that as the number one challenge. But for those of you who are looking for these kind of solutions, be on the lookout for folks who can offer that as well. But really, the realm of tinyAutoML and the solutions that I've seen tend to focus on that model development part of the life cycle, going in and automating the feature engineering and feature selection, the algorithm selection, the model training and hyperparameter tuning, and the model validation, and not just doing this for one candidate model, but usually doing this for a whole army of different candidate models that you can then choose from depending on your particular accuracy needs. Where tinyAutoML goes beyond AutoML is this aspect of optimizing the model for target hardware. And some of the solutions out there are doing this after the model's developed. They're going in and applying different methods in order to make that model require less compute, have lower latency, et cetera, et cetera. But ideally, you're doing this throughout that life cycle. It's every step of this is looking and tailored to build, at the end of the day, an optimized model, whether that be through selecting algorithms that are particularly performant or aligned towards the performance requirements, or in the training and hyperparameter tuning, prioritizing candidate models that have the characteristics that you're looking for. Then in the life cycle, there's the deployment and monitoring. Again, I see this capability less frequently in the tinyAutoML solutions that are out there. For those of you who offer it, good on you for offering it, because again, that helps with building that creating more of an end-to-end solution to the problem that folks are facing. But what this really enables above all is the ability to iterate through this. So again, the moment that you deploy a model into the real world, you all of a sudden discover that folks are using this in environments and in different settings than you had anticipated. Or you find that the world has changed and patterns that are out there in the real world have changed, and you need to retrain. So one of the absolutely most valuable aspects of tinyAutoML is this ability not just to go in and develop that model once, but to be going and doing this on an ongoing basis so that you can adapt to the changes that exist in the real world. And what does all of this unlock? Well, it certainly democratizes the ability to use machine learning models, because whereas it certainly always helps to have data science knowledge, to have this process overseen by data scientists, configured by data scientists, reviewed by data scientists, etc. It certainly makes it now possible for a much wider range of users, but above all, a much wider range of use cases that we could have gone after previously. And to that point, it makes it possible to have this kind of intelligence embedded in devices that are all around us, to make it ubiquitous in a way that previously was, limited to a small number of applications. And before the advent of tinyML, really limited to use cases where you could centralize your data collection and centralize your both your training and inferencing. Theoretically, it also enables a more, shall we say, autonomous paradigm when it comes to models. That idea that has been thrown out since time immemorial of models that are continuously learning and adapting to the environment that they're in. Yes, there's a small class of methods that we have been using traditionally that can do this, but it's really been very difficult to expand this outside of those naive Bayes models that we're using before. Obviously, I'm still not seeing that many instances where folks are willing to go in and create an entire fully autonomous loop and I expect we're still going to be seeing mostly human in the loop use cases going forward. But as we develop those best practices and solve those challenges around governance and control, we should be expecting to see solutions that can adapt in a more or less autonomous fashion. And so when I've surveyed folks about, so what are you actually looking for in your machine learning and data science platforms? It just so happens that usually they're surfacing the capabilities that tinyAutoML solutions are providing. So whether that be on sort of making those tools more easy to use by a wider range of individuals, or whether that be on being able to cover more parts of that end-to-end life cycle, both of which are, I think, plenty of the people who are here today have been building solutions that are going after, and some folks also then expanding this to model development and monitoring, or being able to solve the access to infrastructure challenge, or through automated documentation and things like being able to leverage BLIME and CHAP and other methods for explainability, be able to solve that explainability and governance challenge there. And certainly my analyst brethren, when they go and assess, so, just how large could this market be, they come up with very large numbers, whether that be on 3.4 billion or 5 billion or 8 billion by 2027, or this even larger number by IDC, more on that one later. Certainly the analyst community is forecasting a very large market and a large demand for this. Would I trust these numbers? No, not at all. I mean, for one thing, even I haven't heard of several of these firms previously, and as a person who's been involved in that process of estimating market size, I can say, to put it euphemistically, it's not an exact science. I do trust IDC. I think their data is the gold standard for what we can do. Unfortunately, in this particular context, they're actually measuring something which is far more expansive than the tinyAutoML market. But nonetheless, certainly, it's very indicative of a large and growing market. That being said, my doctoral work I did over with the strategy faculty over at HBS, and I spent 10 years there working as a strategy researcher and then doing my PhD over there. And I can't help think back to some of the strategy greats who I had the privilege of working with and studying from when I was there, albeit for Mike, that was, I think I worked for him for 3 years, all of 20 years ago, but I think I have internalized his thinking on strategy. And I was fortunate enough to take one of Clay Christensen's last courses before he sadly had those heart attacks. And so I find it helpful for every application of new technology that I come across to go in and think through, what would they say? What would be the advice that they would put forth? What would be the things that they would ask you to think about and deal with? Obviously, on the Michael Porter side of things, it's easiest to think in terms of the 5 forces, and there are plenty of things to be concerned about there, whether that be on the threat of new entrants. There are plenty of open source Auto ML packages, as well as increasingly open source options for optimizing models for target hardware. The Apache TVM, for example, comes to mind, or the Auto ML side of things, TPOD, Auto Scikit-learn, etc. Arguably, you could put in the threat of in-house developed solutions into the threat of substitute products or services, and that certainly holds true in the case of John Deere. They built it themselves, and they built a platform for themselves in order to do this. Bargaining power of suppliers, certainly data scientists are difficult, challenging to retain, but so are the product managers, and so are the folks with those rare skills of optimizing models and creating optimized models. And well, so are the cloud vendors who are providing infrastructure, who are capturing a lot of the value that otherwise arguably you should be capturing. And then on the customer side of things, again, the breadth of those customers is still today relatively focused. It's folks who are either tech companies or have a particular use case that they already understand and know they can leverage an embedded machine learning solution for. And then when it comes to the internal rivalry aspect of it, there is definitely a risk here of folks ending up with something that looks like strategic convergence. A lot of the value propositions of vendors that are out there right now look very similar, and they're hard to differentiate for buyers that are coming in. Now, technologically speaking, on the back end, I'm sure they're highly differentiated, but it's going to be necessary to convey that differentiation in order to have sustained competitive advantage and above average returns going forward. So there are things to worry about from Michael Porter's point of view. I would say there are also things to worry about from Clay Christensen's point of view. It certainly has been, in the early days of Auto ML, folks were thinking about this as a disruptive technology. It's like, well, maybe you could displace all your data scientists with this, and and have an entirely new paradigm surrounding the construction of machine learning models. And for the Auto ML community, it's turned out to be much more of a sustaining innovation, whereby it's been supremely valuable and useful for data scientists, as well as folks offering a data science solution, either through services or through products that heavily involve Auto ML. So it's helpful to think of this as a sustaining solution, but often new entrants struggle when it comes to really being able to commercialize sustaining innovations. And so when I went back to my old copy of the Innovator's Solution, I found that I, again, well, 2006, 2007, underlined this particular phrase that captures it, I think, pretty well. And it's that, well, new entrants often struggle to commercialize these radical technologies because they are hard to integrate with existing systems of use. And another one of his frameworks that is helpful to think about here is his jobs to be done framework. Arguably, a lot of the solutions out there are solving just one a component of the ultimate job that an organization is looking to do with with tinyAutoML. So yes, the model is a challenge, and it's arguably the keystone challenge, the deal breaker. But the job that the organization is looking to do also requires the IoT solution, the data annotation labeling solution, the design capabilities in order to develop and prototype that end-to-end solution versus solving the model. So I'm pretty sure Clay would say, think about the jobs to be done, and think about how, if you individually, for your offering, isn't solving that end-to-end job that an organization wants to solve, how do you work with partners or create reference architectures to solve that full job for them? But that being said, with all of this, I don't want to leave you on a note of doom and gloom, because arguably this is certainly the most, certainly the coolest, if not most exciting technology that I see in the AI and machine learning space today. And in terms of what technology could radically alter your individual personal day-to-day life, where you would be embedding machine learning in more aspects of the world that we live in and interact with on an ongoing basis, I don't think any other technology out there comes close to what tinyML and Auto tinyML it can deliver on. So my my hat goes off to my fellow panelists here, who, unlike me, who has the privilege of just looking at this from the outside, are actually going in and solving those challenges from a technical point of view, but also with customers and turning this into reality. So thank you for the good work that you guys are doing on that front. Well, I guess worth leaving you just with this phrase of yet again a little bit of warning. This was from an interview that I did with John Huffman, who used to be the chief scientific officer for data science and AI, and it's that element of I wouldn't say it's the only problem, but a major problem of analytics and AI is has nothing to do with analytics and AI, which you could also phrase differently as, arguably, again, courtesy of the work of a lot of folks who are in this room, this is now an engineering problem versus a science problem. So yes, there's certainly a lot more work that needs to be done on the technological development side of things. But really, I think our challenge right now is on the strategy side. It's on the creating, going from tools and technique and platforms into the realm of solutions. Thank you very much for having me, for listening to me, and please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions, thoughts, vehement disagreements that you have. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Gil. That was great. I really appreciate it. I'm going to start going through the very many sponsor pages, strategic partner pages for tinyML. While I also thank kind of all of our panelists today, I really appreciate everyone's time, the hard work everyone put into preparing for this event. Sam, Martin, Wanyu, Jan, Danilo, Magnus, Leslie, Dee, Blair, Shirag, and Christopher and Chris. Really great job, everybody. I think it really went well. I'm really happy with how it all turned out. And thanks also to the whole working group who helped me, who we all worked really closely together to put all this together. Thanks also to Gajel for our keynote there at the beginning. And of course, as thanks to the tinyML Foundation organization for, really helping all of us help this whole market come together. And of course, as I'm going through them, all of the sponsors of tinyml.org who make all of that possible. I think we're all kind of united in seeing the vision of this whole industry and all of the potential of it. And we hope that you learned a lot today and that you're excited by some of the tools you saw, maybe all the tools you saw, and want to learn more. Please do attend future events. There are discussion forums on tinyml.org. There is also, as I mentioned before, a number of documents and resources and follow-up sessions. So please stay in contact, reach out to any of us on the call here, or reach out to tinyml.org to learn more and follow up. And that is all for today. So thanks very much, everybody, and have a great day.